Hey guys, Vito here to tell you about the latest from Byzantine Black Sea Codex of November 28th, released independently. This EP has 6 tracks, 28 minutes in length, and this is the band's second EP. They are an American groove progressive metal band. Now from these 6 songs, 4 are re-recorded versions of the band's earlier demos and 2 are covers. This is a little bit of a placeholder to let fans know that the band is working on new material and there's going to be a new record down the line with scheduled release for 2023 through Metal Blade Records. Now let's go through these 6 songs, starting off with Unhook Me, a kick-ass song that has all the right attributes to be the opener of this EP. It's groovy, it's hooky, has great melodies, very thick, very driven on both the musical side and the vocal side, allowing them to pair up with one another, creating a very thick experience all around, but a great experience nevertheless. I love the balance that exists, the coordination that exists between the sound and the vocals really working well, separated but at the same time pulling you in the same exact direction. A track that, because of that dynamic, makes the guitars and vocals to be the 2 main common denominators that really push every single element of this track forward. They work really well, like I said, connected with one another, but they also work really well separated, making them the 2 pillars of the overall existence of this track. But this is not to say that the drums don't sound phenomenal, because they do. They allow the song to have a very important backdrop, a very important foundation that allows the guitars and vocals to then just push forward and become a little bit more polarized outside of what the drums are already giving the track. But definitely one of the hookiest songs on this release. Next comes Wings of My Soul. This track has great drum sound. That's the thing that I connected with the most right off the bat. But it still has that thick, groovy guitar experience and very driving force behind those guitars as well, with once again the vocals matching that same experience, working well in parallel with one another, but also intertwining with one another in order for that wall of sound to feel a little bit thicker than Unhook Me. Not as hooky, not as catchy as that opening track, but perhaps gaining a little bit more volume where it's losing a little bit of that hookiness. It's still a great track. The bass has a more defined impact in this song, and therefore that thickness, that volume really becomes a little bit more noticeable all around, because you're not just depending on the guitars to push the experience, you're not just depending on the vocal style to carry you through. Now you're allowing the drums to be almost on parallel with those 2 elements, and then you're bringing the bass a little bit more into the mix, allowing to define that volume, to define that thickness even better. These are the main attributes of this song. Like I said, a track that loses on hookiness but gains on volume. Next you have Sirens, a Coroner cover, and this is a great cover. One of my favorite tracks on the whole release actually, and I really enjoy the experience that this song brought into the forefront. It's groovy on the guitars, it's groovy on the bass, it has great drum consistency from start to finish, and then it has a different vocal approach than the 2 previous tracks. The vocals on this song definitely a little bit more stretched, definitely a little bit more raspy, but giving a little bit more of a footprint to the overall song and to the overall experience. Not as compact, not as thick, a little bit thinner, but a little bit more rugged. And this gives the song a different DNA, it gives the song a different attributes. It really allows this track to stand out, but still work really well in the overall context of the 2 songs that came before. It sets up the track that comes after, which is Purity. And Purity is pretty much the ballad of this EP. So there's a sense of having 2 songs that are very equal to one another, yet different. Sirens, as a cover, breaks the mold ever so slightly, and then they're able to introduce Purity, a song that's very different from everything that came before, very different from everything that comes after. Like I said, the ballad. It really brings the mood down. It's a super melancholic, super dark track in the sound, in the vocal performance, and in the lyrical content. That you cannot hide it. It's in plain sight. I like the fact that this song is not just more melancholic, it's not just darker, but it has different attributes with acoustic guitars, a little bit more of a southern twang to it. And that adds to that atmosphere that the track has, that adds to that darkness that the song holds. And the same could be said for the vocal performance, going with cleaner vocals, deeper vocals, but cleaner vocals, very different from Unhook Me, Wings of My Soul, or Sirens. Very specific for the mood of the track, very specific for the lyrics of the track, very specific for the track itself. It allows this song to have a completely different aroma, but one that's very encompassing and one that makes it very engaging. Beautiful, beautiful song through and through, musically and vocally. Next you have God Shame, and here we go a little bit back to the beginning. This track is a little bit of a hybrid when you look at Unhook Me and Wings of My Soul. Not as hooky as Unhook Me, not as much volume as Wings of My Soul, but bringing those two worlds together allows this song to have a lot more texture, and sometimes texture becomes volume. I don't see it from that perspective, but I see this song as a more layered track that has a lot more to offer. A hybrid, if you will, of the two opening tracks of this EP. It still has all the familiar elements. The vocals go back to that familiarity of those two tracks. The sound has thickness. The sound is groovy. It's not a song that depends on the drums, but rather depends on the guitars, and solely on the guitars heavily, to not just create that volume, not just to create that texture, but also to push the song forward. And this is not to say that the vocals don't have an impact, but they don't have as much of a clear impact and adding volume to that overall experience that the track has. The guitars do all the heavy lifting as far as this song is concerned. Last but not least, we have Red Skies, a cover from the Fixx. In this song, I enjoy the cover, but it felt a little bit out of context when you see the overall design that this EP has. I mean, the song is from 1982. The original track is from 1982. So you're obviously going to get synthesizers. You're going to get that new wave sound. This is a very new wave song. Now, when you look at this overall release, you have more grooviness, or at least more of the groove side of the band is represented in it than the progressive side. This song pushes a little bit of that technical progressive side because of the new wave origins of the original song. So I understand why they would include a cover like this, because it allows them to be a little bit different from what they offered before, but it still allows them to be who they are and showcase a little bit more of where they currently sit as a band, and not necessarily look always into the past, which is pretty much what this EP offers. So I understand how this song comes about. I understand the fixation about it, no pun intended, the fixation with it. I just feel like when you're listening to this EP, there's a sense of sequence, there's a sense of progression. Even when you look at the Coroner cover, Sirens, it fits perfectly in the overall mold, in the overall design. Even with the sound, it's not that far of a departure. This one is a very far departure from the beaten path that this EP offered, and because of it, it feels a little bit disconnected from the rest of the experience. It fits well at the end, because if you're going to have a song this different, you want it to be at the end of the release, not in the middle, not anywhere else. It really feels like a cover. It really feels like a bonus track that is thrown in there at the end in order to give the listeners something different to experience. But I almost wanted them to go in the same format as the previous songs, keep that same thickness, keep that same grooviness, still do a cover of this track, but change the track into the mold of what the EP was offering, allowing it to blend a little bit better with the overall experience. The way it sits, it's very hard to digest this track at the end, because you're almost expecting something in the same lines of God Shame or Unhook Me in order for you to finish on that heavier, thicker, groovier sound, and it goes in a completely different direction. Like I said, a lot more technical, a lot more progressive, because of that new wave origins that the song has. I'm not a fan of this cover, and I'm not a fan of what it offers to the EP, but outside of that, the whole release was super interesting, and I'm discovering great songs from the band's early years that I had never heard before. So this is always a great opportunity to dive a little bit deeper, for me to discover more, and for us to see that Byzantine is still busy creating music. And like I said, there's going to be a brand new record coming out in 2023 through Metal Blade Records. So this is it for me. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on this EP, on the future record that's around the corner. I would love to hear from you in the comment section, and I'll see you all at the next album review.